welcome to Global Ecofeminist, a podcast where we discuss the topics of the environment and feminism. My name is Alexandria, and it's wonderful to have you here today. And with that, let's get into our first topic. Today, I will be discussing an introduction to ecofeminism, what it's all about, people who have paved the way, and what you can do to help the earth become more sustainable and a better place. And with that, let's get into the episode. I am an avid activist and advocate for environmental and feminist rights in the United States and as well as globally. Just a little background on myself. When I was 16 years old, I started discovering the works of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and others that really connected me to the environmental community. I completely fell in love with their work and the natural world in general. The natural world is somewhere I've always found solace and peace within myself. And I know many people can relate to that. And that is why it is so important to protect and respect our environment. Along with environmental rights, I also started getting into women's rights the older I got. I started noticing how women were treated in the world that was very much intersected with how the environment was being treated. I started taking interest in this topic and soon started researching and eventually found the word ecofeminism. A lot of people may not know what this word means, and I didn't either before I researched a lot more about it. So today I'm going to be going over what it means, and we can dive further into the impacts it has on our planet and on the women living here as well. So, what is ecofeminism? To begin defining this term, I searched online for an explanation that could embody this widely unknown concept. According to writer Sarah Reagan in the article, What is Ecofeminism? She states, the term ecofeminism was coined by French feminist Françoise de Beaune in 1974. According to her, the disenfranchisement and oppression of women, people of color, and the poor are intrinsically linked to the degradation of the natural world, and both arose as a result of patriarchal dominance. So as we can see with this definition, de Beaune related the degradation of the earth and women's rights in one. It connects the treatment of women and the earth. It allows us to see earth and women's bodies as one and the same, focusing on female empowerment and making sociological observations on the connection between the abuse of women and nature at the hands of greedy men throughout recorded history. I just want to make this clear that this greatly includes and impacts women of color, including Black and Indigenous people who suffer pronounced disadvantages from a patriarchal system. Sarah Reagan continues to acknowledge that women are disproportionately affected by environmental issues. Women worldwide typically hold less monetary wealth and rely on the natural environment more. They are more likely to be displaced by climate change. This is something I started realizing more within my research. A lot of women are on the front lines of the environmental fight. The climate crisis is getting worse, and women are at the front lines, whether that be the front lines of Indigenous fights for their land rights, women who walk to get water, walk many miles to get water for their children and families. There are many disadvantages that women face all around the world from this climate crisis that are happening as we speak. Now, in the intro, I talked about how feminism benefits men, women, and gender nonconforming people. I believe this to be true because it focuses on the balance we need to keep human life sustainable. There are different aspects that we all bring to help keep the balance of the natural world. The energies and forms of the masculine and feminine intertwine with each other to form equity. And right now it is unbalanced. We're seeing an imbalance through extraction and greed through our resources, our natural resources. We also see this intersecting with how women's bodies are being treated. we are being extracted from, we are being abused, and a lot of violence is being inflicted onto our bodies. We see this intersection from the earth and women's bodies. That is just a brief introduction of what ecofeminism is about. Sarah Reagan continues to state, patriarchal dominance, which presupposes masculine attributes are more valuable, has led to the degradation of nature, along with the marginalized groups, including but not limited to women, children, and people of color. And while the ecofeminism movement is slowly gaining progressive power, it is important that we examine specific examples of ecofeminism imbalance that affects women's bodies and in turn affects the earth. So now I'd like to introduce some wonderful women in history who have been and who are currently still serving this purpose for us to help bring justice to the earth and to women. Now, one many may know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She is a former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. She recently passed away and was a lawyer and served on the United States Supreme Court for 27 years. She was the second woman to serve on the court in history and worked on many environmental and gender issues that were not being addressed effectively in the Supreme Court. An article titled Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Fight for Gender Equality Was for All of Us by Rhea Tobacco Marr, she relates the idea that dismantling patriarchy was necessary not only for women's liberation, but for all of us to have the freedom to thrive regardless of gender. This idea makes me feel like it comes back to the idea that feminism and fighting for women's rights affects everyone. It helps us feel, as Marr said, a feeling of comfortability, freedom, and safety, that we can express ourselves and feel safe around each other. I think this was a very excellent point that Marr made in her analysis. She continues to state, Ginsburg was able to show male judges that sex discrimination hurt men as well as women. Ginsburg also worked on environmental cases such as Massachusetts versus the EPA, Friends of the Earth versus Laidlaw, and others that proved crucial and sufficient in the environmental sector of law. Overall, we miss Ruth Bader Ginsburg and just adore her and thank her for all of the hard work that she has done to move us towards a better world, a better and safer world. Another politician that you might have heard of is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is currently an American politician and activist. Now, I look up to her very much. I feel she is a wonderful role model for girls and women all over the world, especially in the United States. I remember growing up and not seeing many women representing politics and being in policy, being in high positions of power, and making big decisions that affect women and affect the earth. So seeing her be so strong in policy makes me feel very, very proud and very inspired to do the same. So she works on climate justice through supporting the Green New Deal. She is a prominent figure and role model in the United States policy today. She speaks out for women and the climate at meetings and courts, as well as fights for issues of economic inequality, which ultimately relates to the system of patriarchy, which we are living in still today. The patriarchy disadvantages and is dangerous to everyone involved, including women and men. I just like to keep reiterating that because I feel in today's climate, no pun intended, there has been a lot of misunderstanding around the word feminism. And there have been 3 waves, I think we're on the 4th wave right now, of feminism throughout history. And it did start differently than what we see today. And I think that's important to see the difference and know the difference between what we have set up for us in the past and what we are practicing today. And I think having the core values of feminism is important to remember, because that is what we're fighting for. It's the equality. It's not one is better than the other. It's not to start any arguments. It really is just wanting rights that will protect women's bodies, and in turn it will also benefit men and gender non-conforming people. So I just think that is an important point to make. All right, so another prominent figure that we see in today's world is Greta Thunberg. She is so wonderful. She is an environmental activist from Sweden. She brought light to our climate crisis beginning at 16 years old by striking at her school every Friday, refusing to attend until her country of Sweden's politicians took climate action. It is amazing and so inspiring to see what she's doing for the planet and for the youth to speak out and know that they can make a difference. I remember being in high school and feeling like there was nothing I could do to help. I felt helpless. I felt small. I felt like my voice didn't matter. But seeing Greta really, I believe, has inspired so many in so many ways that are unspeakable, and seeing the effect she's had on youth and politicians, I mean, it's really incredible what she's doing and what she's done, and I really applaud her and would absolutely love to meet her one day. Yeah, so she has brought a voice to children, women, and the environment alike. She is a true inspiration and figure of our time, and acknowledges the youth today are being robbed of our childhoods and lives by having to solve an issue that is clearly not in our hands was not caused by us. It is very unfortunate that we have to tackle with this feeling that that we did not really contribute to this world that we are currently living in. And it is hard to tackle with the idea that we have to solve it because there's no other way. And with that, I will transition into some solutions and some steps that we can take to help our planet and to come together and make better decisions for the earth, for women, men, and gender non-conforming people everywhere. So, what can we expect and where can we go from here? That is the question that many people are wondering, myself included. After doing some research on this, I found that there was another term I wasn't familiar with, which is a feminist economy. And I wasn't sure what this was when I first heard it. I actually heard it in a online webinar that I watched for one of my classes in college. And I became very interested in it because I really agreed with a lot of the policies that we would be putting into place with this feminist economy, because the issue is affecting women and the environment alike, and it disadvantages our economies, vulnerable communities, and our health. So with all of these at stake, I mean, one of the largest impacts we can make to reverse and prevent this catastrophe of climate change is to address our current economies. This is something that a lot of people are resisting. But this is where the lens of ecofeminism can be useful and relevant in our examination of a new economy, and that is to reinvest into a feminist economy. Now, what is a feminist economy? So this presentation that I attended was led by the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, which is a great organization that I've come across through my research. And I learned through this webinar that a feminist economy is a critique of our current economic system and the study of the economy based on investment, productivity, capital, and time invested. It is a way of reclaiming the economy as the management of home. Now, analyzing this, after soaking in that information, I was like, okay, so I understand that we want an economy that is productive, has capital coming in and out, and is based on investment. And that's kind of what we have right now. But I think that's what some people are really resisting, is they don't want to change the economy's structure. And I don't think personally that we have to in order to transition to a more just economy. I think that we can still hold that structure that we've had for very long and really just make it more just and safe for everyone, and not just a certain type or certain number of people who are benefiting right now from it. So yeah, it made me realize that we must work with the system presented to us right now, and in that time, it can be used for good purposes and environmental and human sustainability. To my understanding of what a feminist economy is one where we put women and the environment in a place of success and where their needs are met and counted through means of investment, productivity, and time. So we wouldn't be losing those aspects of the economy that we have present day. So the presentation went on to state, it is also a political proposal that integrates various proposals for women and gender nonconforming people's autonomy. And that's something we haven't really seen a lot. But as they continue, they say it transforms systems of oppression that we live in, proposes a system that places the sustainability of life at the center. In a dialogue with the other proposals, global well-being, food sovereignty, energy sovereignty, farm worker sovereignty, Black abolitionist feminism, which is different from mainstream feminism that has been in the past, and I can make another podcast about that, podcast episode and blog post about that, but there are many differences that we see, and those are just a few. So a feminist economy would want to transition, holding the same structure that we have, but placing, as they said, the sustainability of life at the center. And when you place that at the center, it helps everyone thrive, everyone who works hard to keep the economy moving. I mean, our economy is known to be one of the greatest in the world, and we want that in every sense of the term, greatest in the world. We want it to be, sure, from collecting revenue and making sure people have a free marketplace, and capitalism isn't bad at its core, but I think the way that we're using that structure could be reinvested, as they said, with global well-being, food sovereignty, energy sovereignty, etc., where everyone is benefiting, who is participating at the same time. I just think that would be a great idea for all the reasons that were just stated. So we are seeing a slow shift in the human perspective and systems as we speak. We see a lot of spiritual growth, the perspective that people are gaining about environmental sustainability is gaining friction. And I think that's so wonderful, because change is slow. I mean, you hear that all the time. Change is very slow. And that is how we get things done. It is by little. It won't be overnight. And that's something that I have come to terms with. When I was in high school and early college, I would be a little freaked out, thinking about where we're going as a species and how we can get out of this metaphorical train that we're riding on. And although we see this change in global sustainability efforts, there is still a lot to be done. I personally believe that a lot of the change comes from your heart and within. And I was raised by hippie parents, I will admit that, but I do believe that to my core. I believe that you must change your heart before anything else changes. And I believe people are practicing that more, and that is why we're seeing such great change. Going back to defining ecofeminism and what it is really about, is it's a social and spiritual shift that respects and supports the rights of women and the environment to create a harmonious and sustainable world. I like that idea. I don't know about you, but I like that idea. I think everyone benefits. I think we are going to be sustainably living, and there's really no downside. It's just a matter of implementing it at this point. Sarah Reagan introduces a concept called ethic of care, which she explains to be an approach to morality grounded in feminine characteristics of care and nurturing. And remember, at the beginning of this podcast and blog post, I mentioned that the patriarchy values masculine characteristics as more valuable. And I think there is some harm in that. And then I talked about the imbalance of masculine and feminine. I think there's more masculine traits that are being recognized and valued than feminine attributes and qualities. And what she is talking about, what Reagan is talking about, is this approach focuses on human benevolence and acting in a way that prioritizes care for others. And when we care for others, things I've noticed, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that things run smoothly. There's an energy in the air that it comes full circle. Like I feel like when people really care about each other and really hear each other and take into account people's needs, even in an economy that we're living in right now, things run smoother. And I think that's another benefit that we can reap from a feminist economy, reinvesting in one. So with that being said, I believe that ecofeminism is about accepting the characteristics of both masculine and feminine and understanding the balance that we must achieve to be successful and healed, because there's a lot of healing that needs to be done from centuries of pain. I will say that. As we begin to examine the world through this lens and future posts, we must remember the small changes we can make as well as the big ones. And that's something that I'm trying to focus on as well. There's small changes and there's big ones that we can make. And the small ones are just as important as the big ones. And I hope you remember that, because I need to remind myself of that as well. Some of those small changes can include, for example, standing up, speaking out for women when you witness mistreatment, when you witness harm or misconduct around you. I know it's hard. There's that whole thing about the bystander effect, but honestly, women are really going through a tough time and have been for centuries of human existence, and we need all the help we can get. And we really would love to have you as an ally. You can also speak up and protect the lands on which we live, including Indigenous rights and protections. So I know that I'm on Ohlone land. I live in the Bay Area, and I try to respect the lands and the stewards that were here before me and are still here. And And that's something that a lot of people are starting to focus on, and that's beautiful and wonderful. And I will be talking about that topic specifically in my next blog post, because it is a whole topic on its own. But that is one small thing you can do to further into this economy and mindset of care for the environment. And when you do this, people respect you, and you have amazing power. You have power to help someone think differently by your well-intentioned actions. So all in all, ecofeminism is only fully embodied when everyone receives the same respect, including women, men, gender non-conforming people, and the earth. That is an introduction to ecofeminism. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. I'm so excited to go on this journey with everyone. I will leave the link to my website, which has my blog, my podcast, and some other information you can find there below. I hope that you learned something today, and if you'd like to reach out at any point to be on the podcast or just to ask me a question or anything of that sort, send me an email at globalecofeminist@gmail.com, all lowercase. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that you're having a beautiful day. I look forward to the next episode where we can talk more about ecofeminism. With that, I will see you all next time.